Marvel has moved on from its comic book origins from the 1960s. Over the last decade, Marvel has become one of, if not the biggest brands in all of pop culture. These characters from comics have been adapted into the medium of film and are now enjoyed by hundreds of millions of people each year. You only need to look at the financial success of Avengers Endgame from 2019. Endgame overtook Avatar as the highest grossing movie of all time. The film grossed almost $3 billion, and the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe to date have grossed a total of $23 billion, which has worked out to a median gross of just under $1 billion for each film they've released. With the vast amount of people seeing these movies, many casual fans and casual moviegoers learn more and more about the history of Marvel, and I imagine most people will know who this man is.
Hi, my name is Stan Lee, and I was the head writer, editor, and art director at Marvel Comics for many years.
Stan Lee was writer and editor at Marvel Comics and has been an important part of the comics' success in many of the decades before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Lee can be recognised as he has cameoed in all of the MCU movies up until his death, as well as many other Marvel movies not produced by the MCU. Lee has created the characters of X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Incredible Hulk, and many more. However, his most famous creation is without a doubt Spider-Man. One of the most recognised and most loved heroes from comic books was imagined up by Stan Lee. He has taken a great deal of credit for this, and rightly so. However, there is someone who has remained unrecognised for the co-creation of Spider-Man, and I imagine only die-hard fans will be aware of who that is. That is comic book artist Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko trained to be an artist in the 1950s under Jerry Robinson. Robinson is best known for his work on the early Batman comics and is credited for the creation of the Joker. Ditko had worked as an artist under many of the comic book publishers at the time, and eventually he made his way to Atlas Comics, which was the predecessor of Marvel Comics. It was at Atlas where he first met writer and editor Stan Lee. It was their collaboration at Marvel Comics which led to the creation of both Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. At the time, it was really only Stan Lee who got a lot of the credit. He was the showman and the editor of Marvel. You can hear him referencing Ditko's reclusive nature in one of their early sound bites.
Hey, what's all that commotion out there, Sol?
Why, it's Shy Steve Ditko. He heard you're making a record and he's got mic fright. Whoops, there he goes.
Out the window again? You know, I'm beginning to think he is Spider-Man.
Stan Lee even acknowledged the role that Ditko played, saying that Ditko would sometimes write the stories himself and draw the comics completely on his own. Initially it was Lee who would write the stories, but once he saw Ditko's talent for drawing and bringing these stories to life, he was given far more freedom. Sometimes Lee would simply say, "This week, Spider-Man is going to fight Sandman," and Ditko would do his magic. Despite the collaboration between these two for Spider-Man only ran 40 issues, there's no doubt that Ditko contributed a great amount to the character and has contributed more to these stories than Lee did at the time. When Stan Lee has spoken about coming up with the idea of Spider-Man, he mentioned seeing a fly walking up the wall, and he thought, wouldn't it be great to have a hero who could climb up walls like an insect? He went through a list of names, and it was Spider-Man that stuck out to him. It was only with the collaboration with Ditko which the character would come to life. The colour scheme, the patterns, the web shooters were all Ditko's idea. One thing that Ditko and Lee disagreed on was the identity of the Green Goblin. Lee wins this argument, and I think that was for the best. Initially, when revealing the identity of the villain, Lee wanted the Green Goblin to be Norman Osborn. However, Ditko wanted it to be a random citizen. Ditko didn't approve of the convenience of Spider-Man's arch-enemy also being the father of one of his best friends. Lee won this argument, and this is allegedly what contributed to Ditko's exit from working on Spider-Man. Ditko is also known for the creation of Doctor Strange, and has also been attributed to be the sole creator, despite Lee having a credit on the character. Even on record, Stan Lee has stated that Doctor Strange was completely Ditko's idea.
There does exist a hardcover anthology of Steve Ditko called Marvel Visionary Steve Ditko, and in the introduction it prints a postcard that Stan Lee had sent me, which I gave to the comic reader, saying that we've got a 5-page filler coming up in Strange Tales. Nothing great, but we might be able to do something with him. It's by Steve Ditko. It's called Doctor Strange. 'Twas his idea. 'Twas Steve's idea. That's a quote. And Marvel have even printed it. So we now know for sure that was Steve's idea.
I think in particular in this instance, Ditko has not got the recognition he deserved from fans, especially as his artwork for Doctor Strange is so unique and has inspired so many future artists into creating these fantastical and trippy worlds. It has been established that he was more than an artist when creating these stories. He imagined these characters, came up with the stories and brought them to life. In particular, I think the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films really borrowed a lot from Ditko's Spider-Man. After Ditko exited Spider-Man, John Romita Sr. took over drawing the character, and the character became more popular and good-looking in these comics rather than the nerd and the weakling that Ditko had drawn him as. In the Ditko version, it was obvious that Peter Parker is a nerd and an outcast, and future artists would draw him in a different way and evolve the character, but it's the first creation of Spider-Man and Peter Parker by Ditko that really stands out. It is even worth mentioning that in the Raimi films, a reference is put in through the use of the ultimate villain of the trilogy. Not that one. Not that one.
Rand! Hi.
Hi. What's hi? Can I spend it?
Thanks, Mr. Ditkovich.
Hi, Pete.
That's right. Peter's landlord is named Mr. Ditkovich, and this is a reference to the artist Steve Ditko. Mark Millar, probably best known for writing Civil War, has expressed how much of a fan he was of Ditko. He even said that it was the Ditko version of Spider-Man that he looked to when creating his version of the character for the comics.
When I did Spider-Man, the only stuff I read as research was, the Ditko run, because to me that was the heart of it. It was the seed that was planted that's now Spider-Man. Everything that made Spider-Man successful in the beginning is the opposite of what is big now. You know, big, flashy, stylized art and good-looking people is what sells comics now. But back then, the ugliness and the ordinariness is what made it a big hit. It was about everyday stuff. And nobody, for me, epitomised that more than probably Ditko, I would say.
I think those who work in the industry have a strong respect for Ditko, from Miller, Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore. They have all expressed their appreciation of the contribution Ditko made to Spider-Man and to the comic book industry as a whole. It's sad to say that Ditko had lived in reduced means for a long time before his death. It was a shame that in the same year Spider-Man was on the big screen, the artist never made any residual money from this, and Ditko continued working into his 80s in order to make a living. I need to highlight that the only reason Stan Lee was making money from the Marvel films was because he was essentially a brand ambassador. He was not getting residual checks from the company either, but because of his large following and influence, Marvel used the writer/showman in order to promote their brand. I do even think that Ditko would have turned down this opportunity even if he were a bit less camera shy. It is clear Ditko didn't care about the money, he just cared about his work. I feel that some people paint Stan Lee as the bad guy in this whole situation, but I don't think that he necessarily was. I think Lee just enjoyed the attention more and didn't mind taking the credit of Spider-Man when his co-creator was rather reclusive. Stan Lee took a while to recognise him as co-creator. He initially gave Ditko a letter saying that he himself considers Ditko to be the co-creator of Spider-Man. It appeared that it didn't satisfy the artist. In more recent years, Stan Lee has shown a great deal more recognition of Ditko's contribution to Spider-Man and has even said he is the creator of Spider-Man. After Ditko's death in particular, Lee expressed how important Ditko was to the medium. Ditko has been honoured more recently, but not by name. In Spider-Man Homecoming, there is a scene where Peter is trapped under the rubble and struggles to get out. This scene is a homage to panels drawn by Ditko in a Spider-Man comic. In the comic, Spider-Man is trapped under some machinery with water rising around him. Whereas a strong hero getting trapped would only be a minor disruption, this is different. Many comic fans and writers, including Neil Gaiman, say that this is one of the greatest moments in all of comic history. The use of over 3 pages to show our hero trapped and really struggling to get out, page after page, panel after panel, Spider-Man struggles to get free. It shows off what the medium of comics is truly capable of. It was great to see the filmmakers behind Homecoming clearly took inspiration from this iconic moment. This was all down to Ditko. His artwork, his ability to tell a story through pictures brought this moment to life in the comics, and getting referenced in this hit movie is truly showing Ditko some love that he finally deserves. It would be great to see more of these references in future films, and I think potentially we will do. Overall, I don't think we can take away from the importance of the work Stan Lee has done for the medium of comics, and his involvement in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Without a doubt, even after death, we recognise his importance to the history of Marvel. That can never be taken away from him. I have even seen in the latest Spider-Man Miles Morales game that Lee is honoured with a statue, but he has had all the recognition during his life and after it. I feel that it's important for fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Marvel in general to learn more about the significance and the importance of Steve Ditko. At the end of Into the Spider-Verse, we get an in-memory message for both the creators of Spider-Man, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. With the upcoming Spider-Man 3 featuring Doctor Strange, and the upcoming sequel to Doctor Strange, it would be nice to see artist Steve Ditko get honoured further and in a greater way than he has already. That being said, Ditko lived a reclusive life, and may not have wanted fuss of us remembering him.
Steve had said, having an idea is nothing, because until it becomes a physical thing, it's just an idea. And he said it took him to draw the strip and to give it life, so to speak, or to make it actually something tangible. Otherwise, all I had was an idea.
For more information on the life of Steve Ditko, I suggest you watch the BBC4 documentary In Search of Steve Ditko from 2007, which is actually available on YouTube and is linked in the description. I would love to know your thoughts on Steve Ditko getting more recognition in the comments. Please give this video a like, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to receive notifications for my videos, and thanks for tuning in.